Before you start playing Atomic Heart for yourself, here are 5 tips I really wish I knew before I started playing the game. Like respeccing my character, elemental effect interactions, and so on. This guide is sponsored by Focus Entertainment, so you can grab the game for yourself via the link in the description. Now let's start with tip number 1. Make sure you loot everything. Atomic Heart has tons of weapons to craft and upgrade, and your character's abilities can be enhanced with resources that you gather in the game. And the earlier you gather those resources, the stronger you're going to be. You can use your scanner to check for any lootable items or enemies and hidden chests that you may have missed around you. But there's 2 main types of resources that you're going to want to focus on. Firstly, in order to upgrade your character's skills and abilities, you'll need Neuropolymer, which you can obtain by looting dead enemies. So it's actually in your best interest to kill all the enemies you come across. This can be done stealthily as well if you like. Just don't forget to loot the enemies after. Once again, you can use the scanner to check for where the loot of each enemy ends up after they explode. Now the Neuropolymer that you collect can be spent on character upgrades at the Nova vending machine, which is this red machine which you'll find at every single checkpoint in the game. And by the way, the game has 5 skill branches and 94 possible upgrades for each of those skills. So you'll not want to skip out on farming as much of this resource as you can. I'll talk about the skills in more detail in a moment, but first let's talk about the second resource you can farm. And this one's for crafting and upgrading weapons. You see, as you play through the game, you'll be discovering different blueprints for different weapons and upgrades. If you want to get a head start on that, by the way, make sure you subscribe because I'll have some videos coming out on where you can find some easy locations early on in the game. But all the materials for crafting and upgrading weapons can be collected from both enemies and looting storage containers specifically. So I'd highly recommend, especially early on, going through every single room and just looting all the containers you can find. Thank goodness the looting in this game feels absolutely great. You can literally suck everything out of drawers using your glove automatically. If you also click on any of the resources here that are required for these weapons, you can actually go through them individually. It will show you every weapon in the game and exactly where you can find these different components. Next though, we have tip number 2. Dismantling things gives you all of your resources back, and you can even respec your character perks and skills as well. In Atomic Heart, you'll come across lots of different weapons which you can craft and upgrade, but quite often you won't have enough resources to craft and upgrade everything. Like right now, I have 3 different melee weapons and I want to try them all out, but I can't craft them all at once. So instead, what I'm going to do is go to the crafting machine and click on the storage and disassembly tab. Then move whatever you want to disassemble from your inventory to your storage. Then we're going to click on the disassembly tab on the top left. And then I'll disassemble my axe and it refunds 100% on the materials that it costed to craft it, which means I can infinitely deassemble and rebuild the same items without losing any materials. And the reason I'm clarifying that is because a lot of RPGs don't let you do that. You usually get diminishing returns from dismantling something, but in Atomic Heart you just get all of your resources back. It doesn't punish you for swapping out weapons or wanting to try different playstyles. This goes for upgrading weapons as well, which also costs resources. Each weapon ability can be upgraded with various special attacks, damage types, and more effects. Some weapons even have multiple upgrade path options, so you have to decide between one of them. For example, the 2-handed axe we get at the start of the game has a downwards power attack, or alternatively, you can choose the other upgrade for a spinning power attack that obviously hits more enemies but does less damage. Each of these weapon special attacks can be upgraded, but if you want to try the other version, just click to install it and you'll get all of the resources that you spent on the other upgrade back. And you can swap back and forth at any time with no loss of material. I love this feature and I really wish it was in more games. As for respecking your character's skills and perks, you can simply click on the perk you don't want and press the button on the bottom right to return it, and it will refund any Neuropolymer that you spent on that skill. You can refund every skill and perk in the game and get all 100% of everything you spent back, so feel free to try out different playstyles. Tip number 3. Now the enemies in Atomic Heart hit hard, depending on what difficulty setting you're on. And you'll obviously want to dodge the power attacks, which are indicated by red circles when an enemy is about to power attack. Now as you play the game more, you'll get used to just distancing yourself just far enough away from the enemy so that they don't hit you with their normal attack. You can also upgrade your character to have additional dodge charges and also to get immunity frames when you're actually dodging, which I definitely recommend picking up as soon as possible. But I have found the most effective way of taking out enemies is to start charging your power attack, then wait for the enemy to attack, and if you dodge, it then leaves them open for a free power attack hit on them. And you can actually dodge while you're still charging your power attack. It doesn't interrupt it, so as long as you don't get knocked down by an enemy's power attack, you can make each one of those big hits count. Next we have tip number 4. In the post-apocalyptic world of Atomic Heart, like many other apocalyptic games, you may not want to just be spamming your weapons and firing all of your ammo at the earliest opportunity. You will be unlocking blueprints to craft additional ammo for your shotgun, your rifle, pistol, and the rocket launcher, but I'd recommend spending all of those valuable resources instead of just on ammunition. It's actually better to upgrade your energy weapons and your melee weapons instead, which simply just cannot run out of ammo. Energy weapons recharge over time and melee weapons can't be destroyed. This is arguably a better use of your resources, especially early on in the game. But that said, I am the kind of player that holds on to 1,000 healing potions just in case I might need them. And then at the end of the game, I've got like 10,000 healing potions which I never used. So take that with a pinch of salt. Because next we have tip number 5, elemental damage combinations. There's a bonus tip after this one as well. So there are 3 elemental effects in Atomic Heart, which can be applied by either using the glove abilities, which have recharge timers, or by slotting craftable cartridges into your melee weapons or guns, which get consumed the more you use them. Now Atomic Heart has 3 elemental damage types. Firstly we have the ice damage. This freezes enemies and makes them vulnerable to being smashed with melee weapons. It's kind of funny because you can literally freeze them like mid-attack and they just sort of freeze in mid-air and then fall to the floor. And it obviously stops them moving and slows them down. So it's great for managing and controlling enemies. Secondly, we have electric damage, and this is super effective against robots. And it can be upgraded to jump from enemy to enemy and even act like a small EMP to temporarily disable robots, especially flying robots, which when disabled obviously crash to the ground. Thirdly, we have fire, which does damage over time. Now fire can only be applied via using weapon cartridges, but it is super effective against organic enemies. In fact, if you're ever unsure, you can always check what enemies are weak to by scanning them. Now we also have access to telekinesis for levitating enemies, shields, and also the Polymer firing skill. What's interesting about the Polymer ability is how it interacts with all the elemental effects. You can actually combine things. You see, you can put down a wall of polymer fluids onto the floor, for example, and then if you apply either frost, shock, or fire to it, the effect will then spread to any other enemies that come into contact with it. It also amplifies the effect of that element, so you can literally make a wall of elemental effects to apply the effects in a large area. I'd highly recommend pairing all of the elemental effects with a Polymer skill because it really does dramatically increase the damage and spread of all of those elemental effects. For example, guns with fire cartridges let you set fire to a whole area of Polymer from a distance. Now we have tip number 6, kind of like a bonus tip really, because Atomic Heart does have an open world to explore, but you won't actually reach it until you go through the whole of the first facility, which is basically like the start of the game. Once you do reach the open world, however, I'll have another video waiting for you on several more tips and tricks you can do once the world begins to open up and you can explore a lot more. I'll link that video just over here and in the description, or you can hit that subscribe button. I'll see you in the next video.